This is an introduction to the new features in Starry Landscape Stacker version 1.7. I'm going to begin by loading some sample images here. These sample images were donated by Adam Woodworth. Adam has some great tutorials on how to do night sky photography, and there's a link to his website at the end of the video. Starry Landscape Stacker version 1.7 starts up the same as earlier versions. It shows you the images and it's placed some red dots where it thinks the sky is. The key differences here are that there's more dots, they're more evenly spaced, but there's still a chance that Starry Landscape Stacker is going to make some mistakes. So for example, there's this red dot way down the corner here where there's a highlight on a rock. So I'm going to hit the G key here. So now I'm painting ground, or I'm erasing red dots. I'm also going to erase these red dots over here in the clouds because we're interested in sky that has stars. It's not so much that we want to have a mask for the sky. We want a mask that covers the area of the sky that has stars. And this is just cloud here. Okay, that's good. We're ready to go. Find sky. And now we have a mask for our sky. Let's zoom in on the area over here where the trees are. And we are currently looking at a mask with islands of sky. We can change that to a mask without islands of sky. And Starry Landscape Stacker will remember what you've chosen and give it to you as the default next time. So without islands of sky, let's zoom in some more. New feature, we can use Command plus and Command minus to control zoom, so let's zoom in some more. Let's look in this area, and without islands of sky, with islands of sky. So if you are taking pictures through trees, through bridges, this could be a useful feature. If you choose mask with islands of sky, sometimes you will have some area of ground close to the sky that will be about the same brightness as the sky, and it will get masked by accident. So you have to choose carefully. You have to look and watch, make sure you're not accidentally getting part of your ground being thought of as an island of sky that's separated by some areas of ground. Okay, very useful though if you're working with trees, bridges, the Eiffel Tower perhaps. Okay, now let's take another look at this. Let's go back and we're going to say we're going to adjust the dots of the sky. We're going to delete the mask. Now in the past you had a menu of dot densities to choose from. Now you've only have a button and you can switch between no dots and the automatic dots. So I've changed to no dots. You might want to start with no dots if there's something about your foreground that it's full of red dots, or something about your sky and there are no red dots in it. So you want to start from nothing. So we're going to start from nothing. We're going to say we're going to add red dots. What we want to do is draw a line of red dots close to the boundary between sky and ground. Again, here we're not interested in marking this area of cloud as sky because there's no stars there. We're only interested in stars. So we can go quickly along the edge here. We don't have to be very careful. This is more than careful enough. And then we also have to mark all the way along the outside here because Starry Landscape Stacker doesn't know if there's a tree or something sticking in from the side. In this case, there isn't anything, so we just quickly run around the outside and we say find sky. And there we go. Oh, we missed a little bit here, so we can paint that in. And we can zoom in again. Essentially the same as what we had before. We still have our choice of mask with and without islands of sky. In this case, it seems that we've accidentally gotten some limbs here marked. That's going to happen from time to time, and as in the past, we can change a brush size. I was using the square bracket keys to do that. Switch to painting ground with the G key, and there we go. And if we really cared, we'd go through and find all the places like this one that have to be fixed. But that's good enough for now. Let's zoom back out, and we're going to go over and we're going to say align and composite. And when it's done with this, we'll get to see some changes to the composition algorithms that are available. But before we look at the composition algorithms, I want to show you something that's going to show up in the final image here. And the thing to note is that Adam resized these images before he sent them to me. He resized them with Lightroom, although I think the same thing would happen with other tools. And what you see is this interference pattern. Let me zoom in on a bit. What's happened here is that the resizing algorithm used by Lightroom has put in this pattern, but it's quite faint in the original image, and you really can't see it unless you zoom out and play with the brightness and contrast, but it's there. And the reduction in the noise, the stacking algorithm, it emphasizes this pattern. It doesn't create this pattern, it just emphasizes it. The solution is don't resize your images before you process them with Starry Landscape Stacker. The other thing to keep in mind is don't use the lens distortion corrections. You'll get the same sort of effect, but it will be curved. You'll see arches if we zoom out. So you'll see bowing in this pattern. It might be more coarse than this. Okay, so don't resize, don't apply a lens distortion corrections. But what we want to talk about is our menu here of 6 composition algorithms. Let's start at the bottom here with min value. Some people like this because it tends to emphasize the Milky Way over the adjacent stars. There's also max value, which is the opposite, the brightest at each location, and this emphasizes the airplane trails, which some people might want, but it also might be useful for emphasizing satellites or meteors. There's a video I did, instructional video on how to bring out satellite in your images. So let's go to the top, min horizon noise, and let's zoom in over here. So this is, I think, the composition algorithm that will be most useful to most people most of the time. Another choice, though, is this one, min horizon star duplication. If you look here, this is at the boundary between the sky and the ground. And if you look closely, let's zoom in on that some more. There's some noise there. It's faint in this case, but there is some more noise in the min star duplication. So what's going on here is you have a trade-off. You can minimize the noise in this area, but you run the risk of having stars duplicated or smeared in the area. In this case, we've selected min star duplication. We have some more noise. In this case, it doesn't look so bad. In some cases, it looks worse. In this area, there are no stars, so the choice, of course, would be min horizon noise. But if there were some stars in the area, let's zoom back out and go over here. So here we have stars around the boundary between sky and ground, and we run the risk of having stars smeared through that boundary if we choose min horizon noise. In that case, we can choose min star dupe. So we get a little bit more noise. We might have more accuracy with our stars. You can choose to use one algorithm one area and one algorithm the other area by saving the results of both algorithms and then combining the images in Photoshop, choosing the results of one algorithm in one area and a different algorithm in another area. So that's min horizon noise and min horizon star dupe. I think most people most of the time are going to prefer min horizon noise. But you also have the choice of mean. It appears a little bit brighter. It might show a few more stars in the difficult areas here. And again, with mean, you have 2 choices for how it's going to deal with the horizon. And here again, I think the minimum noise is going to work best for most people most of the time. This algorithm on top here, min horizon noise, it's doing a variation on median with outlier rejection. It's not exactly median with outlier rejection. It's something I think that works a little bit better, produces better results quite often. That's our choices in the composition algorithms. The key change here is we now have a choice between minimizing our horizon noise and minimizing our horizon star duplication. Most of the time, I think that minimum horizon noise is going to be best for most people. The other key changes that we saw, there's differences in how the dots are placed. You now have a choice between a fairly dense pattern of automatically found dots or no dots. Then you can make the sky mask. You can adjust the sky mask by painting it, but also you get to choose between having a mask that just follows the outline and a mask that also tries to jump over things, over branches of trees or pieces of structure, and say in a bridge, to find other areas of sky that are nearby and make them part of the mask. And that could be very useful for people taking pictures through trees. And we also have a new feature, the ability arbitrary zoom levels with Command plus and Command minus. So those are our new features in Starry Landscape Stacker version 1.7, and thanks again to Adam Woodworth for letting me use his images.